So I did my paper on transportation pollution policy. Obviously, transportation pollution policy is a huge issue. This is a picture of Ghaziabad, which is a suburb of Delhi, India. It has some of the worst air pollution in the world, and 80 people in India die every day of air pollution, according to the India Times. This problem clearly needs to be solved, and policy is probably one of the most effective ways to solve this problem. I look at Tokyo, Beijing, and Los Angeles as examples of how you can control traffic pollution through policy. The first one is Beijing. It's obviously very well known for its transportation pollution problem. Despite being known for this, Beijing has been making very big strides towards lowering its emissions. In recent years, a license law has limited the amount of cars and what type of cars can be on the road, along with other forms of promoting sustainable transportation. Beijing has implemented a lot of public electric buses and hybrid vehicles, taxis that are encouraged all to be electric and hybrid in the modern day. This is a map of Beijing showing where pollution is. Obviously, it's still a very polluted city. It still has a lot of work to go, but it has made big strides in recent years. This map used to be much worse. This is a metro line of Beijing. Often that can tell where the population centers are and how much the city values public transportation. These metro lines are obviously pretty extensive, and Beijing is working even more to encourage public transportation in the modern day. It's been growing its public transportation in industry and everything in the recent years. So the next city I focused on is Los Angeles. It has a very well-known problem with air pollution in the US. It is associated with the car very commonly. In the 1970s was the worst time for air pollution in Los Angeles. Smog levels were getting dangerous. People were dying of obvious smog-related causes. And so in the 1970s, Los Angeles implemented more HOV lanes, and they also started to implement more tolls and pay for parking to discourage drivers with a monetary incentive, which in the US at least is very important to getting people off the road. Los Angeles has many poor areas, and often in these poor areas, they're surrounded by these massive places of industry and transportation. So they often get more air pollution than others. The poorest neighborhoods have had studies on them where they show that these neighborhoods experience higher rates of premature births, serious lung damage present at a young age, and many other issues associated with the bad air quality in these neighborhoods. Los Angeles also has a very small metro system, as seen in this picture. It is 1/3 the size of the city I talk about later, Tokyo, and it is very small compared to even one little sliver of Tokyo's public transportation. Even compared to Beijing, Tokyo or Los Angeles is much smaller, and it definitely does not value the metro system as much, which is bad because public car ownership is one of the leading cause of emissions. This is a BreezeMeter picture of Los Angeles. Tokyo is the largest city in the world. 37 million people live here. And despite this, it is less polluted than many other cities across the world. So how does Tokyo do this with its massive population? Tokyo has extensive public transportation. Lots of metros and trains go throughout the city, encouraging residents to use these instead of cars. Tokyo also is a very walkable city. It has many walking and biking paths established to encourage the use of less cars. Obviously, Tokyo used to be pretty polluted, but in the modern day, through these policies, it has lowered its pollution. This is the map that I was talking about earlier of Tokyo's public transportation. It's very extensive, and you can see even a little sliver has about the same as Los Angeles. So that gives you perspective on how these cities differ with their public transportation. This is the BreezeMeter map of Tokyo. It's not as bad as Beijing or Los Angeles even, and it is the biggest city in the world. Other methods. So Oslo, Norway has begun to take parking spots away from the city center. This makes it so there's less cars that will be traveling there and more incentive to commute through other means. Barcelona has super blocks where they don't allow cars within these 9 blocks of buildings. And so they're all just pedestrian and commercial zone areas where this mixed use zoning allows people to live and work and eat in the same area, which is better than places like Los Angeles, which has commuters going everywhere. Electric vehicles are becoming more popular in car-built cities. These will become very important in making emissions lower. Self-driving car technology can also be a form of public transportation in the future that will discourage car ownership. In conclusion, policy is the most effective way to curb traffic emissions, and we need more policy to lower our emissions across growing urban centers.